The elegant chamber music was at its peak when it was suddenly cut short by the heavy thud of combat boots on the Plaza Hotel's marble floors. In a room filled with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume, armed men in black swarmed in. Standing there in her $20,000 Vera Wang wedding gown, Chloe froze as her perfect fiancé, Julian, was pinned down right at the altar. Handcuffs tightened, camera flashes went off like lightning, and my sister's dream of the wedding of the century went up in smoke amidst my mother Eleanor's piercing screams. At that same moment, far away from the chaos, I sat in the shadows of my small kitchen, quietly watching my glowing phone screen. I felt no pity. I felt no guilt. I only felt the final silence after a long, brutal storm. My father called, his voice breaking into sobs, begging for an explanation. But he forgot one thing. They were the ones who chose to cut the last bond between us first. It all started with a cold zero balance on my banking app. One foggy Tuesday morning, $150,000 money I had traded for thousands of night shifts at the hospital, skipped meals, and 5 long years without a single day off. It wasn't just money. It was the heartbeat of my 7-year-old daughter, Avery. It was the cost of the heart valve surgery she needed just to keep breathing. My mother had drained it all with one forged signature, then smirked and called it a family contribution so Chloe could have a high society wedding. She told me Avery would be fine, that kids are resilient, while Chloe's reputation couldn't wait. That's when I realized blood doesn't mean love, and kindness was a weakness I could no longer afford. I'm an ICU nurse at a top-tier hospital in Chicago. My job is to stand on the line between life and death, where the smallest mistake costs a soul. I've learned how to keep my face expressionless when giving bad news to families, and how to keep my hands steady during a chaotic emergency intubation. But when I get home, all that toughness vanishes in front of Avery. At 7 years old, she's so fragile it looks like a strong wind could blow her away. Avery doesn't run and play like other kids. Her heart is a broken machine, each beat a painful effort I can hear clearly in the dead of night. For the past 5 years, my life revolved around 2 things: the numbers on patient monitors and the balance in my savings account. I saved that $150,000 with an extreme, almost obsessive persistence. It wasn't money. It was the price of my daughter's future. I worked 80 hours a week, ate cheap takeout, and denied myself even the most basic needs. I sold my only car and walked to the hospital through Chicago's freezing winter nights just to save a few dollars on gas. Every 16-hour night shift brought me one step closer to the day Avery's life would be saved. My family looked at me like I was a freak, a mother obsessed with money. My mother, Eleanor, always talked about family unity, even though she never knew what it felt like to gasp for air or fear losing a child. Chloe lived in a world of silk, where money fell from her parents' credit cards. They looked down on my frugality, calling it a morbid obsession. When my mother offered to add her name to the account for emergencies while I was exhausted from back-to-back shifts, I agreed, desperate for a little family warmth. I handed her the key to Avery's life, never imagining she was preparing to use it to lock our last door of hope. My mother, Eleanor, showed up at my apartment late one evening with a basket of pastries and her sharpest weapon, fake concern. She sat there on my old sofa, looking at me with calculated, teary eyes. "Alara, look at you," she whispered, her voice soft as silk but cold as a razor. "You're working yourself to death. If you collapse in a hospital hallway, who will sign the papers for Avery? Who will get the money to save her if you aren't conscious?" At that moment, I was at my worst, severely sleep-deprived and haunted by fear. Her words sounded cruelly logical. She was Avery's grandmother. She was family. With hands shaking from exhaustion, I tapped a few buttons on my phone and added Eleanor to my daughter's life-saving account. I told myself it was a safety net. I didn't know I was weaving my own noose. 2 days later, Chloe posted a photo on Instagram. It was a stunning wedding dress from a famous New York designer with the caption, "Finally, the dream comes true. Thank you, Mommy, for the surprise gift." A sick feeling rose in my chest, like a parasite eating away at my calm. Tuesday morning, I opened my banking app out of habit. The screen reflected my hollow face. Balance, $0. I refreshed the page. I turned my phone off and back on. The number stayed the same. $150,000. The result of 1,825 days of hell had vanished without a trace. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. A deathly silence filled the room. In that moment, something inside me turned to stone. Family love died, making room for a cold, calculated plan for revenge. I didn't drive fast. There was no need to hurry because the money was already gone. The bank branch on Michigan Avenue appeared through the misty rain, looking like a tomb of glass and steel, sterile, white, and smelling of industrial cleaner. The bank manager, a man with a fake, sympathetic face I wanted to erase, confirmed it. Eleanor had walked in, used her legal co-owner status, and drained my daughter's lifeblood. I didn't cry in front of him. I just nodded, thanked him for the clarity, and walked out. The house I grew up in now felt like a crime scene. I didn't knock. I walked straight into the living room, where Eleanor was busy looking at high-end silk and lace samples for Chloe's big day. She didn't look guilty at all. She just looked annoyed that I was interrupting her vanity. "Where is the money?" I asked, my voice as flat as a frozen lake. Eleanor didn't even look up. "Alara, don't be so dramatic. We needed it for the venue deposit. Chloe's wedding only happens once in a lifetime." "Avery's heart only happens once in a lifetime too, Mom." She sighed, putting down a fabric swatch. "She'll be fine. Kids are resilient. You always make things so dark with that medical talk. Chloe needs this to save face with Julian's high society family." "Thank you. Though, you really saved the family reputation." "Oh, and since space is limited, you and Avery don't need to come to the wedding. We don't want the mood dampened by health issues." A thin, cold crack formed in my soul. I didn't argue or beg. I just turned and walked away. As the door closed, I knew I was no longer a daughter. I was a predator, silently waiting for the right moment to deliver my own brand of justice. I sat in my car outside my apartment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white and numb. I didn't cry. In the hospital, we call this anaphylactic shock of the soul. When the pain passes your threshold, your senses shut down to survive. I took out my phone to send Chloe one last text, not to beg, but to ask if she could really sleep at night on the blood money of her own niece. But the screen showed a truth even crueler than silence. Chloe had blocked me on every platform. No explanation. No excuses. My sister had erased me from her life like a line of bad code. To Chloe and Eleanor, I wasn't a person. I was just an ATM that had run out of cash, a dark medical talker ruining their party vibe. When I walked inside, the place smelled like antiseptic and loneliness. Avery was sitting at the bottom of the stairs, her lips pale under the dim yellow light, her breath wheezing like wind through a narrow crack in a storm. She tried to stand up to greet me but stumbled, gasping for air. I rushed over, pulling her tiny, weightless body into my arms. I could feel her chaotic heartbeat thumping against my chest, a clock ticking down its final seconds. "Mommy, is today a good heart day?" Avery whispered, her gray-blue eyes looking at me with total trust. I kissed her forehead, feeling the cold sweat. "It's going to be okay, Avery. I promise. That wedding will never take your breath away." That night, listening to my daughter's wheezing in the dark, I looked at the calendar on the wall. The surgery date, circled in red ink, was approaching like a death sentence. My family chose white roses for an altar over Avery's life. Fine. I would choose a wedding gift for them too, one called The Brutal Truth. Despair is a very pure fuel if you know how to refine it into cold, clear hatred. I didn't waste another second screaming or pleading. The law might be helpless against a mother withdrawing from a joint account, but the law is very strict with people who build castles on fraud. I turned my focus to Julian Chloe's self-made millionaire fiancé. He was too perfect, too polished, and in my experience as an ER nurse, things that look that clean are usually covering up a rotting wound. I reached out to Tom, Julian's former accountant, who had left the company 6 months ago with a face permanently etched with anxiety. We met at a rundown coffee shop on the outskirts of Chicago, where the rain drumming on the tin roof drowned out our whispers. Tom looked like he'd just walked away from a plane crash, exhausted and terrified. I can't keep this in anymore, Alara, he said, sliding a dull yellow folder across the stained table, especially not after what they did to your daughter. Julian isn't just a smart businessman, he's a financial parasite. Inside the folder were complex Excel sheets, fake invoices, and evidence of a money laundering network through ghost real estate projects. Julian was using investors' money to pay for his lavish lifestyle and this upcoming vanity wedding. And my mother, Eleanor, had unknowingly or knowingly contributed the final $150,000 to fill a hole that the IRS was already investigating. That night, under my dim desk lamp, I looked at Avery sleeping heavily, and then at the documents. I didn't feel any pity for my family anymore. I only saw chess pieces waiting to be knocked over. Patience is a virtue. But for me right now, it was a weapon that left no fingerprints. I sat at the kitchen table at 3 a.m., surrounded by bank statements and the files from Tom. Avery was asleep in the next room, her wheezing echoing down the hall like a countdown to doomsday. Every difficult breath was a reminder that I had no time for mercy. I didn't call Eleanor to threaten her. I didn't try to negotiate with Chloe. A real hunter doesn't growl before the strike. They stay silent until their teeth are in the throat. I spent the night organizing the evidence of Julian's money laundering, linking it to the $150,000 my mother withdrew. With the precision of a nurse, I drafted an anonymous report to the IRS and the FBI's Economic Crimes Unit. I attached every encrypted file, the cold numbers that told the story of the rot behind Julian's billionaire image. Meanwhile, in their suburban mansion, Eleanor and Chloe were likely drowning in white roses and expensive candles. They had no idea that every yard of silk and every bottle of champagne was being paid for with Avery's life. My phone buzzed. It was Avery's doctor. His voice was low, carrying the chill of reality. "We need to move the surgery up, Alara. Her heart is failing fast." I gripped the phone, eyes fixed on a photo of Chloe laughing with Julian on my computer screen. "I know, doctor," I replied, my voice as flat as a coin. "Everything will be settled by this Saturday. I'll have the money." Chloe's wedding day would be the day Julian was erased, and the day I took back what belonged to my daughter. I didn't feel cruel. I was just a mother taking out the trash to save her child's life. Saturday morning arrived with an eerie stillness. No alarm, no traffic noise, just pale sunlight through the trees hitting Avery's pale, sleeping face. Today was Chloe's big day. In downtown Chicago, at the Plaza Hotel, thousands of white orchids were being placed in vases. Champagne was being chilled, and my mother was likely smiling at her reflection, proud of her achievement. They were preparing for a royal wedding. I was preparing for a financial execution. I went to the kitchen and quietly made pancakes for Avery. She woke up late, dragging her old blanket, and sat at the table telling me about a dream where her heart was a gold watch that had finally learned to keep the right time. I smiled a smile that didn't reach my eyes, while the phone on the table buzzed constantly. Texts from Eleanor, "Don't cause trouble today," or from relatives asking why I wasn't there. I flipped a pancake, smelling the butter and vanilla, completely ignoring the noise from that fake world. Exactly at 2 p.m., I got a short text from an unknown number, "Task force in position." My heart didn't skip a beat. I calmly cleared the dishes and helped Avery into her softest pajamas. I looked at the calendar on the wall, where Avery's surgery was only 48 hours away. Family chose flowers and lace. I chose my child's life. This silence wasn't peace. It was the final quiet before Eleanor and Julian's fake empire exploded into 1,000 pieces. At exactly 4:27 p.m., just as Julian was about to say his fake vows in the orchid-filled ballroom of the plaza, the truth hit like a blade through thin silk. The chamber music died, replaced by the heavy stomp of boots and the loud commands of federal agents. Julian was tackled, his face slammed into the floor in front of hundreds of Chicago's elite. Chloe screamed in despair, her $20,000 dress stained by the chaos, while Eleanor collapsed onto the marble floor amidst falling rose petals. The fake empire they built on my daughter's blood collapsed in seconds. In my dark kitchen, my phone began vibrating violently on the table. I let it ring 3 times before slowly picking up. Eleanor's scream tore through the silence, tasting of pure panic. What did you do, Alara? You ruined your sister's life. The police are taking Julian. They froze every account. The wedding is a war zone. You're a monster. You're cold-blooded. I leaned back against the counter, watching Avery carefully color a bright red heart on a piece of paper. My voice was steady, as flat as frozen water. I didn't do anything, Mom. I just stepped aside and let the truth speak for itself. You're right, Julian was arrested because numbers don't lie. Just like that $0 balance you left in Avery's surgery account. You're insane! We're family! Eleanor shrieked over the sounds of sobbing and the crowd fleeing on the other end. Family doesn't steal a child's breath to buy vanity. I cut her off coldly. You chose silk for Chloe over a heartbeat for Avery. Today, Chloe has a pretty dress, but Julian has handcuffs. This is the wedding gift you paid for yourself. Never call me again. I hung up, took a deep breath, and felt a brutal sense of satisfaction fill my chest. In the days after that disastrous wedding, the Plaza Hotel was no longer a symbol of luxury, but a ruins of greed and lies. Julian is facing a mountain of federal charges for money laundering and fraud. He'll be spending the next several years in a tiny cell instead of a $1 million mansion. Chloe didn't get a honeymoon in the Maldives. Instead, she's being hounded by creditors and the scorn of Chicago high society. My mother, Eleanor, continues to play the victim in a dark room, screaming to anyone who will listen that I'm a cold-blooded demon who destroyed the family. But their noise can't reach me anymore. I learned that sometimes, to save what's precious, you have to be willing to burn the bridge to your toxic past. Avery's surgery was a complete success. The steady, strong beep of the heart monitor in the recovery room was the most beautiful music I've ever heard. It was real. It was alive. And it couldn't be bought with lies. When she opened her eyes and smiled, I knew the price of this punishment was worth it. My medical colleagues and even strangers from the community stepped up to cover the costs of our surgery, proving a simple truth. Family isn't always about blood. Family is the people who stand by you when the world turns its back. I didn't win any awards, but I won back my daughter's future and my own peace of mind. I cut the biological tie to protect a pure heart. Protecting your child isn't betrayal. It's the ultimate courage. Sometimes, the harshest boundaries are the ones that save lives. If you've ever been betrayed by your own blood, remember, you aren't alone. Don't let family tie you to injustice. Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about truth and silent justice.